Welcome to JCATS, a program that seeks to introduce Japanese contextualized literature and ideas for use by missionaries and anyone that seeks to share the gospel with Japanese people.
日本人から聞く日本のキリスト教。
Hey, welcome back to JCats. Hope you had a nice summer. Summer's not over yet, but I've almost got one of my kids back in school, so that's nice. Still got two downstairs. Hope they don't come running up here making a lot of noise, but they might. Stay tuned. Today I wanted to talk about Shinto. Yay, Shinto. You guys like Shinto? What is Shinto? Well, Shinto comes from the characters for kami, which is divine. It's the same character that Christians use for God. So Shin is one reading for kami. Kami can mean God, can mean gods, little g, most commonly like spirit, divine spirits or middle realm spirits. And the to would be like do, like the dojo, right? No, that's a different do. But like karate do goes in the dojo. Those are two different dos. The Shinto do would be like road, way, which is ironic because a lot of Japanese like stuff like calligraphy would be like what shodo, I think, and tea ceremony would be sado, would it be like cha kanji do, karate do, judo. These are like the way of something. So the way of the gods is Shinto. That's Japanese animism. That's how I would, in a super short definition, I'd just say, oh, Shinto's Japanese animism. But that describes what Shinto is, and it doesn't necessarily describe what Shinto feels like or what people who have been heavily influenced by Shinto feel like. For example, Japanese people. Now, I think one thing here I'm going to be sharing from my same resources last time, which was Kosuke Nishitani's Understanding Japaneseness. Last time I went over his sort of framework of Japaneseness, which I found very helpful. You can listen to my attempt of a summary of that in the previous episode, or you can just read the book. He takes the work of 6 what I would call Japanologists and creates a framework. He says basically the works of these 6 Japanologists through the framework of maternal filial affection is a great way of understanding Japaneseness. I agree. I thought that was great. I think I will probably think about Japaneseness. Now whenever people are like, oh, that aspect of Japaneseness, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's this thing from, that, oh, that's the vertical society, nakane, that's the maternal stuff. That's amae from doi, etc. Without getting too far into that, I just want to head to the epilogue of the book because he talks about Shinto. Now, the last 2 or 3 chapters of the book, he goes through a very well cited and organized argument to show that the I think it's the Nihongi, which is, or the Nihon Shoki, the Chronicles, which I think are like the Kojiki, which would be like the records. These are the oldest like Shinto writings, which are sort of folk history of Japan. I think the second one, the Nihongi, the Nihon Shoki, which would be the second of those, maybe sort of like a revision of the Kojiki, was compiled in 720 AD. Okay, that's like when people say, like, what's the Shinto Bible? They probably mean the Kojiki, which would have been the Nihongi would be based sort of like a 2.0 of that, I think. Been a couple months since I went through the explanation here. What Nishitani points out is that the compilation of that was in order to establish, like in stone, emperor rule, or in this particular generation, empress rule, so emperor or empress rule, and Fujiwara clan regency. You see this model, not necessarily the Fujiwara part, but emperor regent model, clear until, Tom Cruise and Ken Watanabe are like gunned down in The Last Samurai, in like the 1800s. You know what I mean? What would it be? The Meiji Restoration, the end of the Tokugawa era. You had until then an emperor, and then someone claiming to act on behalf of the emperor or regent. So why is that important? Nishitani would argue that the codification, as it were, of Shinto is not the basis of Japanese thought, but itself comes out of Japanese thought. So the older concept than the codification of Shinto would be a maternal filial affection framework. Mother loves all her children, but will kick out the outsider children, right? Father will let the kids compete against each other and have a winner, right? So most Western societies is sort of, a lot of the ideas are sort of a paternal ideas. And the general way that we think about Christianity in the West would be through a paternal society framework, for good or bad. And there's I'm not arguing superiority of either. I'm just saying that there's good and bad in both, and Japanese understand it through the mother framework, not the father framework, right? And there's going to be some thoughts about Shinto that line up with that. Okay, this is interesting. In 1999, just reading from the epilogue here, the Jinja Honcho, Association of Shinto Shrines, published a series of pamphlets in English in order to explain Shinto to foreigners. A little bit lower. Amazingly, this represents the first. Okay, Shinto Beliefs is one of the pamphlets. Amazingly, this represents the first such effort by Shinto as a religious institution to have a written creed or confession. 1999. Remember, The Nihongi was compiled in 720. That means the Kojiki was 15, 20 years earlier than that. So 1,300 years of written Shinto before an attempt at a creed or confession, pillars of Shinto, anything. And that only being written in English for foreigners trying to understand Shinto. That is the idea of sort of Japanese thought not lining up with Western thought. The big point here, which we talked about 2 episodes ago on the talk about Nihon Kyo, is that the ideas of systematization and strong, hard definitions are not Japanese ideas. The Japanese generally don't like strong, hard definitions. Evidenced by the idea that the only reason someone attempted to write confession or creed in the first place was to explain it to foreigners 1,300 years after the fact. Pillar number 1. Shinto believes humans to be the offspring of the kami. As a result, kami and humans are related by blood. Not only humans, but the native land and nature itself are also considered to be products of kami. Okay. I think that so there's a couple of things that come out of this practically. Talked about it a couple of times. I think last time, the blood is thicker than water concept, which is important when we teach the Old Testament. If we start talking about suzerain vassal treaties and God cutting a covenant, these are super cool, super high level Old Testament studies concepts that Japanese don't care about. Like, if God is our father or parent, then what do we need like a covenant with? Like, you don't like law is generally in Japan less important than person to person. Like, resolution between people is more important than what the law says, generally in people's minds. Also, Japan's respect for nature, right? You watch a World Cup game, Japan and anybody. At the end of the game, the cameras turn to the stands, and we watch Japanese people pick up trash. Why? Because the Japanese care about nature and their environments. This says not only humans, but native land and nature itself are also considered to be products of kami. Point number 2. Shinto believes that this world continues forever, and it is through the cooperation and diligent work of humans that this world can be made a better place. Okay, so picking up the trash again, right? I highlighted this world continues forever. Very, very important distinction between the way we talk about Christianity and the way we talk about Shinto, or the way that Japanese people think about eternal things, right? I think that 2, 3, and 4 really gel, so I'm just going to go ahead and read 3 and 4 here. Shinto believes that the human spirit lives on after death, receiving the worship of descendants, while watching after and protecting those descendants. Number 4, Shinto believes that what is most important is to live fully in the present. Shinto does not look for eternal values or rewards in an afterlife. Okay, fishbowl syndrome. Think of yourself as a fish in a bowl. on my desk. I have a couple of toys on my desk over here. My son went to an origami class and made hats and put them on my toys. When I say toys, I mean like little Japanese statues and stuff. This little Mario pipe is from Baskin Robbins, and I've got a little Tengu because I don't have a Mario turtle to put in the pipe, so I put a little Tengu in. Anyway, let's think like you're a fish in a fishbowl on a desk. What else is on the desk has nothing to do with your world, right? It's outside of your fishbowl. I think that Japanese people tend to think the same about locality, like local, both in time and in space, is of paramount importance. The future, the afterlife, is almost like no interest to a lot of people, except maybe people who are dying soon. I hear about a lot of Japanese come to Christ shortly before dying. Okay. But you hear about Japanese coming to Christ overseas more often than in Japan. Again, their locality, their place when they are overseas, their support group is often, in the case of people who come to Christ overseas, their support group is maybe a local church or a ministry to reach Japanese people. In Japan, they may come back to Japan and find that their local church is very small and perhaps not higher than about fourth on their list of support networks: family, work, community. So you hear about a lot of people becoming Christians overseas, coming back to Japan, and then ceasing to be Christian, as it were. It's difficult. This also sort of means that when you try to evangelize by, as we would in the West, offering eternal salvation as sort of the carrot, and eternal condemnation, which is often contrasted with the carrot as the stick. You want one and you want to avoid the other. But if Japanese people think, for example, number 3 here, receiving Shinto believes that the human spirit lives on after death, that this number 2, this world continues forever. It is most important to live fully in the present. That all works violently against the apologetic that you should become a Christian to avoid the wrath to come and to live in heaven after you die. Because again, you're talking about after death. If you go back a few episodes, maybe 10-ish, I talked with Matsuda Sensei, who actually I'm hoping to talk to again soon. And, he says that it's a good idea with Japanese to emphasize that the kingdom of God is here and now. It starts now. It continues into eternity, but God is with you here and now. In that sense, if we think about the fishbowl again, you're talking about what's in the fishbowl, not just what is outside of the fishbowl. It extends outside of the time and place locality, but it starts in the time and place locality. That's important, I think, when we want to evangelize Japanese people. Yeah. So I thought that was cool. I'd never heard of a systematization of Shinto or a pillars of Shinto or a creeds and confessions of Shinto. But apparently, in 1999, they wrote it down in a pamphlet for foreigners to understand what Shinto is. So thank you, Jinja Honcho, for providing that pamphlet. Thank you, Nishitani Sensei, for bringing that to my attention in your wonderful book, Understanding Japaneseness. I'm going to close with just a reread here of the 5. Number 1, Shinto believes humans to be the offspring of the kami. Number 2, Shinto believes that this world continues forever. Number 3, Shinto believes that the human spirit lives on after death. Number 4, Shinto believes that what is most important is to live fully in the present. And number 5, Shinto believes that humans contain both good and evil, but by nurturing the kami mind of compassion and humility, one can improve and exhibit better human qualities. Thanks for listening.